Ultimately, the answer to the question of where are the boys will be answered. It's that they're dead. And at the end of the case, I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to Trezell and Jacqueline for the murders of Orrin and Orson West.
A grand jury indicted the West, the adopted parents of Orrin and Orson, in March 2022. Their attorneys have said the couple had nothing to do with the boys' disappearance. The bodies of Orrin and Orson have not been found.
One of the most highly anticipated trials in Kern County in recent years. A jury was chosen last week for the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West. The California City couple is charged with murders of their adopted sons, Orrin and Orson, who were reported missing more than 2 years ago. The bodies of the boys have not been found. One of the things that's very interesting, though, the boys are still missing. There are no bodies. Yet these parents are charged with involuntary manslaughter and second-degree murder. How is this possible if there are no bodies?
That's one thing that was asked of District Attorney Cynthia Zimmer when the charges were first announced. And she said she could recall 2 cases off the top of her head where there were no bodies in Kern County, but the DA was able to get secure murder convictions in those cases. So it is possible. It is a lot more difficult, though. Typically, in a murder trial, I think Eric Smith said during jury selection last week, he told potential jurors 99.9% of jury trials, there's a body. You're going to see autopsy photos. You're going to hear from a pathologist talking about how the person died. In this case, you're not going to have that. So it's going to be interesting to see what evidence the prosecution has pointing to the fact that someone was killed and that the Wests were responsible. They have a lot to prove here regarding that, since the boys have not been found. Involuntary manslaughter to second-degree murder. Both. Why both? Most serious charge is the second-degree murder charge. That carries a penalty of 15 years to life. In that case, that's the example I've heard most often is shooting into a crowded room. It's a reckless disregard for human life. You may not mean to kill somebody, but it's so reckless that you can be charged with murder if someone dies as a result. The involuntary manslaughter is the unintentional killing of someone else. 4 years is the maximum you can face with that. As to why they filed both, I'm not sure. It may be that the evidence doesn't support second degree. They go with the involuntary manslaughter instead. In California, it's 7 years a person is presumed dead if they haven't been heard from. In this case, they filed charges just after about a year and a half, I believe it was. And I think part of that is because the boys are so young. Mm-hmm. They're clearly not traveling anywhere. Right. Either. One thing that Timothy Hennessy, one of the defense attorneys for Trezell West, said is that, one, their clients didn't do it, but also he said the boys may still be alive, just missing. Someone may have taken them. So we'll find out more about what he has to say during his opening statement, too. Because that is what the West said when they initially reported the boys missing. They said they ran away. They got out of the back fence. That's correct. The father said he was gathering firewood. It was December 2020. He was outside gathering firewood. The boys were outside playing together. He said he went in briefly to drop off the firewood, came back out, and they were gone. However, the interesting thing in this case is these were not the West's only children. They have multiple other, both adopted and biological children, and they're expected to be involved in the trial, right? That's right. The Wests have 2 biological children and 2 other adopted children, and at least some or maybe all of them will be called to testify. I believe the oldest is now 13 and the youngest 6. And during jury selection, the defense attorneys did ask potential jurors. They said, we want you to keep in mind that, yes, there will be children testifying. There's probably going to be some emotional testimony, some tears. Right. But don't let that sway you. Just listen to what they say. And also to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes children say things to please adults, kind of suggesting to the jury that they may be wanting to please the investigators, and it may not be exactly what happened. But they just told them basically, keep an open mind and examine their testimony as you would anyone else. The Wests were a family of 8 with 4 adopted children and 2 biological children. Smith told the jury that the West's primary source of income was the $4,000 total a month made from each child they adopted. Smith said the boys are dead and they didn't die at the same time.
Orson was in California City for about 4 days. At some point, Adrian heard a loud thud in the night. The day prior to hearing the thud, Orson was there. The day after the loud thud, Orson was gone, and he hasn't seen him since. Defense attorney Timothy Hennessy says this is still a missing persons case, and that the West want answers as to where their children are, as any parents would.
This was a tragic accident, is what the evidence will show. All right? They don't have an answer for it because it was tragic. but instead Trezell is here on a murder charge.
Hennessy said there are inconsistencies in the investigation and that evidence will show the couple's innocence.
Cal City out the gate just never thought anyone would take two little black boys. That's why the investigation will look the way it did.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trezell West. This is Jacqueline West. And their two sons are missing. Their sons, Orrin and Orson, are missing. And we're here because it's easier to charge them than for them to explain why they couldn't find them.
This is the last known photo ever taken of Orrin. Recovered from the cell phones that were seized in this case. This is the last known photo of Orson, taken in the apartment at Lotus Lane, July 25th, 2020. Now, during one of the interviews, and it'll be played for you here, Jacqueline West talks about how she talked to her kids about Orrin and Orson. She said, I told them, pretend they're not here. Just act like they don't live here. Just go do your work. She talked about what she did with Orrin and Orson. I always keep them separated. I keep them separated.
Weird.
I focus mainly on schooling while they're playing. They don't really play together, but they have played together. I just don't know. But that's essentially what happened to Orrin and Orson. They were in that home, but they were kept separate. And then ultimately, sometime in September, they were killed and have not been seen since then. Not only were they not in the van on December 19th, that they hadn't been in the home in California City also.
As testimony and body camera footage was played from the night the boys were reported missing, officers questioned that the boys had left through the backyard as the couple claimed.
Their bodies have never been found. Have never been found. Even with the attempts of the California City Police Department, the Bakersfield Police Department, the FBI.
The prosecution also stating that the West's other children all claimed the boys were gone long before that night, and that neighbors claimed to have never seen one or both of them.
For weeks, that all four will be called to testify, including the eldest child who said he witnessed Orrin turn pale and die one night when the family still lived in Bakersfield before moving to California City.
Officer Brian Hansen testified that he became suspicious shortly after responding to the West home for a report of two missing children. This was in December of 2020. Hansen said he checked the backyard where the West said Orrin and Orson had been playing, but saw no footprints made by a child's shoe. This is not a normal situation, Hansen said into his body-worn camera video that was playing in court this morning. These kids didn't just walk away, he said. The biggest revelation in this case so far came from the prosecution yesterday. Prosecutor Eric Smith telling the jury one of West's other children said he witnessed one of the boys die and said the other later disappeared after a thud was heard one night. Although the boys' bodies have not been found, the prosecution has said that evidence, including interviews with the West's other children, indicates the boys were killed in September of 2020, 3 months before the West reported them missing. The West are charged with second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and other offenses and face life terms in prison if convicted.
The trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West is back in session. This is the 18th day of the trial for the couple, charged with murder and other offenses in the death of Orrin and Orson West, also known as Sincere and Classic Pettis, who authorities say died 3 months before the West reported them missing. Detective Thomas Hernandez is back on the stand under cross-examination by Timothy Hennessy, lead attorney for Trezell West. He is discussing receiving a tip from a woman who says she saw the boys in Arlington, Texas. An address and license plate was given, Hernandez said. An Arlington man testified last week the woman was mistaken. The children are his own biological children. Hennessy is asking if another man, not the one who testified, also lived at that address. Hernandez said he would have to review the report. The detective is reviewing the report. Hernandez said an investigator looked into the matter and it was determined the children in question were not Orrin and Orson. Hennessy is continuing to ask about a Victor Rodriguez, another man who lived at the Arlington address. Prosecutor Eric Smith has objected, and the judge said there is no info Rodriguez lived at the address, but was associated with it through the tip made to FBI. Hernandez says he doesn't know what Rodriguez looks like. Hennessy asked about Rodriguez being investigated for drug smuggling, and the judge sustained an objection and struck the question from the record. A sidebar is being held. Back from the sidebar, Hennessy is asking about a tip from a Hector Rodriguez that led to a home being checked for the boys. Detective Hernandez says he doesn't recall the name, but knows a home was checked. Hennessy asked if the person who made the tip said they had more info, but were afraid of the physical harm. Hernandez reviewed the tip. The judge reminded the jury info is only being allowed for them to consider what Hernandez did in relation to the tips, and it is to be considered as hearsay. Hernandez said he followed up on the tip, but he did not contact the tipster. He said when it came to tips, there were houses, vehicles, and leads they looked into. In this case, police went to the house and didn't find Orrin or Orson. Hennessy finished questioning Hernandez, and now Alexia Torres-Stallings, lead counsel for Jacqueline West, will question him. Hernandez said he read the reports of Cal City officer Brian Hansen, but did not see the videos of the interviews until they were played in court. On December 29, 2020, took part in a welfare check at Maria Martinez's home, where Jacqueline and Trezell were living at the time. Martinez is Jacqueline's mother and had foster children. Torres-Stallings asked about 2 refrigerators at Maria Martinez's apartment. Hernandez said he doesn't recall there being 2 refrigerators and said the apartment wasn't searched. Hernandez said they were at Maria Martinez's home for about an hour. He said he recalls Jacqueline West cried. Torres-Stallings is asking about footage from different cameras in December. He said he didn't review footage to see the West traveling back and forth on December 5th when they visited Maria Martinez on her birthday. Torres-Stallings has moved into evidence a Taco Bell receipt from December 8, 2020. She asked if they checked the video footage to see the comings and goings of the West on that date. Hernandez said they did not. Moving to the interview of the West's eldest child, Hernandez said he was present for the boy's 3rd interview. He doesn't know what info was provided to Sunya Barton, the social worker who interviewed the child. An updated police report written by Hernandez and other detectives runs to 2,000 pages. Since then, during the trial, supplemental reports have been written, Hernandez said. Hernandez said he did not write a report about the first report made by the eldest child to his resource parent. He said he found out that info by 2nd or 3rd hand. Torres-Stallings is attempting to show the eldest child may have seen certain things about the case online or on the news or been told them. She has displayed a photo showing Hernandez with the boys' resource parent and the boy as they tried to get passwords for his parents' phones. The boys no longer live with that resource parent. They have lived with another woman since the end of January 2021, Hernandez said. He went to that residence too to check up on the children. Torres-Stallings asked Hernandez if he was aware the eldest child said the first resource parent told him the boys were dead. She said the boy told his grandmother she said that. A hearsay objection was sustained. Hernandez is reviewing a report to see if the woman's name is mentioned. He said she was mentioned during a pretext call with one of the other West children. Hernandez said he wasn't present when the children testified before the grand jury and doesn't know if the resource parent was present. Moving back to the apartment of Jacqueline West's mother, Hernandez reviewed photos and said there are 2 refrigerators there. Hernandez said he contacted the neighbor who lived behind the West. Torres-Stallings asked if he recalls her telling him the search parties took place a couple of days after she saw a man in a red sweater and a ski mask. He said he doesn't recall that. After reviewing a transcript, Hernandez said that's correct. Hernandez said he has read the report of an interview with Perla Martinez, Jacqueline West's sister. He said he did not review records to see if there was a call made on December 18, 2020. Torres-Stallings asked Hernandez if he came across a journal for Jacqueline. He said he went through it. It's from 2021. She asked if he was aware Orrin and Orson's birthday were in the planner. A hearsay objection was sustained. Tori Stallings showed him copies of pages from the journal, but he said they don't refresh his memory as to the birth dates of Orrin and Orson. Tori Stallings has moved on to the interview on July 1st, 2021, in which Hernandez questioned Jacqueline West. A pest control person told police he saw 6 or 7 children in the home when he went there, Hernandez said. He said he's still focused on the West as being behind the disappearance of Orrin and Orson. Tori Stallings is referring Hernandez to surveillance footage of the West home on December 19, 2020, the same day they dropped off their 4 oldest children in Bakersfield. She played a video of 2 people walking up the street who stop at an intersection by the West home. Hernandez said those people were never identified. You don't know what they were doing? Is that fair to say? Tori Stallings asked. Walking, Hernandez said. There was an objection to show a second video, and Judge Charles R. Brimmer called a sidebar. The judge and attorneys came back, and a 15-minute break was announced. Court is back in session with Hernandez still on the witness stand, being cross-examined by Tori Stallings. Hernandez said he talked about sexual predators with Jacqueline West during a July 1st, 2021 interview. He said he didn't follow up on the Texas lead until after Hennessy gave his opening statement. Hernandez said he was unaware there was a list pulled of sex offenders living in Cal City at the time of the reported disappearance. He said he has not followed up on the other individuals on that list. She ended questioning. On redirect, Hernandez said the pest control guy gave multiple figures as to how many children he saw at the West home. On recross, Tori Stallings asked again about his interview with that man. Hernandez is done, and the prosecution has rested its case. Tori Stallings, who reserved her opening statement until after the prosecution rested, will present her opening statement in a few minutes. Her opening will be recorded on camera, but will not be shown live. The audio stream will remain live. Court is back in session, with Tori Stallings presenting her opening statement. She has displayed a photo of Christmas stockings hung at the West home. She's about to start. She said Jacqueline West was wrapping gifts for her 6 children when her 2 youngest were taken. There are no confessions, and there is no forensic evidence. All we have is the story of a 10-year-old boy, she said. Tori Stallings said the timeline is important. She said there was a separate investigation that was also occurring at the same time as law enforcement, and that one was conducted by Child Protective Services. There was a proof of life call at Wanda West's residence, Trezell West's mother, who had the other 4 children when Orrin and Orson were reported missing. December 22nd, the other children were interviewed by the officer Brian Hansen, who has admitted having no training in interviewing children. The boys were interviewed by Sunya Barton at 3 p.m. that day. The boys were detained by CPS. On December 23, 2020, Barton and a social worker were involved in text communications. The FBI used ground-penetrating radar and found no human remains. The West van was forensically analyzed and no evidence found, Tori Stallings said. Days passed with nothing, she said. The West's eldest children had access to the internet. On December 28, 2020, there is communication, a text message from Barton to Officer Hansen. At 3:36 p.m., the eldest child is interviewed by Barton a 3rd time. Tori Stallings said it's unknown who was present or why they were present, what info was given to the child, and how that impacted him. The defense's expert witness, Dr. Susan Napolitano, will testify to how these things can impact a child's testimony. Napolitano will talk about the history of forensic interviews, the mass hysteria of child sex cases that happened in the 1980s as a result of forensic interviews, in which nearly all defendants have been exonerated. Napolitano will talk about the importance of confirmation bias, she said. She said she'll look at Hansen's videos, all 3 of the eldest child's interviews, and how Barton's second interview of him was very suggestible browbeating the child into saying what she wants. Napolitano will conclude, taking all of the data points she has evaluated, that there was implantation, coercive techniques that made the eldest child susceptible to false memories. Another expert witness, Christopher Armstrong, will testify to the videos of surveillance footage showing the West home. She said Armstrong enhanced those videos and took a still from December 19, 2020. She said it shows someone carrying a child to the van, or something to the van. Armstrong will also testify to a car scene in another video that he will say stay stopped, reversed, and went forward again, Torres Stallings said. Armstrong will testify to contrast ratios, luminosity studies, she said. At the conclusion of our case, it is still a tragedy, she said. The outstanding question of where the boys are will still remain. She said, however, there will be reasonable doubt, and the jury will find Jacqueline and Trezell not guilty on all counts. Torres Stallings has finished her opening statement. Christopher Armstrong has been called to the stand. He's an accident reconstructionist. He performed work on video and still images from the defense in this case. Armstrong is being paid $295 an hour for his testimony. He said he believes the county is paying his company. Armstrong reviewed the Bakersfield Police Department report, several surveillance videos taken from the home next to the West home, photographs and aerial views of the West home and surrounding area. Armstrong testified he enhanced video using similar techniques as to what an FBI witness testified to earlier on the stand. He enhanced videos from December 19th and December 21st, 2020. Torres Stallings has shown Armstrong an image, and he's describing what he did to enhance it. She's going to play the video. Court is in recess until 1:30 p.m. Court is back in session in the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West. Jacqueline West's attorney, Alexia Torres Stallings, is questioning her first witness, Christopher Armstrong, who enhanced images and videos for the defense. Armstrong testified one video of the West home on December 21st, 2020 shows lights in the background that, in his opinion, correspond with the motion of a car on the roadway. Armstrong said the video shows someone opened the right door of the West van, but you can't see who it is. You can see the door open, but can't see the person because they are wearing dark clothing and there is very little reflective light. Torres Stallings asked, what about someone 3 feet tall wearing dark clothing? If you can't see them in the video, does that mean they're not on the video? No, Armstrong says. You can't say something isn't there just because you can't see it due to the contrast in the video. He said 2 small children would be much harder to see than if an adult opened the door. The clothing and the color of their skin could also make it more difficult to see them. The darker the clothing and skin color, the more difficult to see in video taken at night. Torres Stallings ended her questioning. Smith has begun cross-examination and is asking Armstrong what software he used. Smith asked, what happens when you zoom in on the footage? Armstrong said it makes it larger. Smith said the quality diminishes the more it zoomed in. Armstrong testified he saw no one else in the backyard, even on his enhanced footage, other than a person in the backyard previously pointed out by the prosecution. Did you observe 2 small children at any point? Smith asked. No, Armstrong said. Under redirect, Armstrong testified to what could be a sign behind the height of the fence given the measurement he was given. Armstrong has been excused. Pamela Castillo has been called to the stand. She is in the adoption unit in the Department of Human Services. She was assigned to the West case on December 23, 2020. On that day, she got a paper with names and began doing background checks. She said her first point of contact was the FBI. She said the boys were most likely at the Jamison Center or a foster home at that point. Steele testified she had a couple of conversations with social worker Sunya Barton on the morning of December 23rd. She said she hadn't yet communicated with the resource parent with whom the children were staying. On December 24, 2020, she went to a hearing to file a petition to keep the children in custody while the investigation continued. Then, over the weekend, she talked with a lieutenant at the California City Police Department. Asked if she followed the case at all on the news or Facebook, Castillo said, I tend to follow all cases. Castillo, questioned by Tori Stallings, said she's aware her text messages and emails regarding this case have been provided to attorneys. Tori Stallings asked if Castillo examined the emergency response referral in this case. She said yes, but hasn't seen it in a long time, so Tori Stallings handed her a copy. Castillo confirmed the referral form only related to Orrin and Orson, not the other West children, and it was for general neglect. Castillo said on December 22, 2020, she became aware she would be assigned to the case. Tori Stallings asked who she heard about it from. Castillo said, not from social worker Sunya Barton, but she started speaking with her about it that day. Castillo said it's a small office. They talk about different cases when they come in. To the best of my knowledge, yes, Castillo said, when asked if the children were detained at 3 p.m. on December 22, 2020. I do, and the judge thought so as well, Castillo said when asked if she thought she had enough evidence to detain. Tori Stallings asked Castillo if she was aware if there was an issue with the initial contact with the children. She said no. A sidebar has been called. The judge and attorneys are back. Castillo said she had not reviewed the emails from DHS that were provided in this case. Castillo said she believes corrections were later made to documents provided to the court. She said county counsel suggested it. Castillo testified she contacted Officer Brian Hansen at 11:05 a.m. on December 28, 2020, because she received info about what may have happened to Orrin and Orson. She couldn't reach him. Followed up with the FBI. On that same day, she contacted Sunya Barton to schedule a forensic interview. Tori Stallings asked if Barton was panicked. Castillo said she was a little nervous. Court is in recess for 15 minutes. Court is back in session with Castillo on the stand being questioned by Tori Stallings. Castillo said she spoke with Sunya Barton after the children were interviewed. Barton said he's lying, according to a message sent between Barton and Castillo. Tori Stallings is going over messages the two social workers sent each other. Castillo said yes, she was present during the third interview of the eldest child. Barton left twice during the interview to speak with law enforcement, she said. Law enforcement was telling her topics to cover. She said she doesn't know if they told her about a real estate agent. Castillo said the interview was conducted at the request of and guidance of law enforcement. They're the experts, she said. Tori Stallings finished, and Smith is questioning her. Castillo is going over the hearing where a judge determined there was enough evidence for CPS to continue its investigation. She confirmed no one from the DA's office was at the dependency hearing. Smith ended his questioning. Castillo has been excused. Sunya Barton, who has previously testified, has been called to the stand by Tori Stallings. She's the social worker who interviewed the West children. Barton had 2 interviews with the West eldest child on December 22, 2020, and Tori Stallings is going to play the second interview. Transcripts are being handed out to the jury. The video is playing. Barton is asking about discipline in the house. The boy said his father will either give them a tongue lashing or make them sit in the corner. Barton asks about being forced to take cold showers. The boy said he's never had a cold shower as a form of punishment, and he thinks sometimes the showers were turned on cold but just needed to warm up. Barton tells the boy all his other brothers talk about the cold showers. The boy says Orrin and Orson took cold showers too. Barton reminds the boy he said he would tell the truth and asks if he doesn't see anything going on inside the house or not hear it or what. The boy denies being spanked with a belt and bleeding. The boy says he thinks his brothers exaggerated the punishment. The boy says there's nothing that's gone on at his house that he's concerned about. The video's over. Tori Stallings ended her questioning. And now Timothy Hennessy, lead attorney for Trezell West, is questioning her. Barton confirmed she conducted forensic interviews of all the boys. It was on December 28, 2020, that the eldest boy said he saw Orrin die. Prior to that, he didn't say that. Barton said she's aware the purpose of forensic interviews is to make sure the children tell the truth and are not improperly influenced. Between December 22nd and 28th, Barton said, she came to the conclusion the parents were lying after seeing the interview the parents gave to the news and interviewing the children for the first time. Hennessy is asking about Facebook stories Barton shared with another social worker that weren't true and how Barton kept falling for them. She confirmed that's true. Hennessy asked if she said these kids just need to spill the beans already. Barton confirmed that's true. Hennessy asked if it's true that when the FBI asked for fingerprints of the children, she sent a text to another social worker saying, how many bodies of a 3 to 4-year-old could they have? And used the shrug emoji. Barton said that's correct. Barton confirmed this message was sent before the eldest child's interview on December 28, 2020. Barton said some of her text messages with another social worker were just conversation. Hennessy ended his questioning. Under questioning by Tori Stallings, Barton said she and the other social worker did not discuss the alternate theory that Orrin and Orson were kidnapped. Barton was excused, and court is in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow.